IBESS, Soil Systems and Terrestrial Food Production Systems, Part 1, will examine the fundamentals of soil as an ecosystem, inputs, outputs, transfers, and transformations. Secondly, this movie will look at soil structure, particularly the nature of soil as a mixture of sand, silt, clay, and organic matter. The significant ideas are, number one, the soil system is a dynamic ecosystem that has inputs, outputs, storages, and flows. Number two, the quality of soil influences the primary production of an area. And three, fertile soils require significant time to develop through the process of succession. Here is the first of two slides that outline the available movies in the Soil and Terrestrial Food Production unit. Use this outline to find the movie you need for review. This movie is the first in the series. Here is the second of two slides that outlines the available movies in the Soil and Terrestrial Food Production unit. Use this outline to find the movie you need for review. Soil is an ecosystem unto itself, but soil is also natural capital from which natural income flows. Now, soil produces the natural income of services mostly, but one could argue that soil's role in supporting primary productivity is natural income as a good. Now, keep this idea in mind that the quality of soil influences the primary productivity of an area. Here are the first two IB syllabus statements of the movie. The soil system is a dynamic ecosystem with inputs, outputs, storages, and flows. And secondly, describe the soil profile that displays soil layers known as horizons. Soil is the top layer of the Earth's surface, consisting of mineral particles, organic matter, organisms, nutrients, air, and water. Now, soil forms from a combination of inputs, organic matter from above and weathered parent rock from below. Now, you add living organisms to the minerals and the organic matter, living organisms such as worms, fungi, bacteria. You add some air and water, and you've got soil. Now, the soil system has a profile with layers known as horizons. Now, this is the structure of soil, starting with the O horizon. This is a layer composed mostly of leaf litter as an input of organic matter. Topsoil, the A layer, is the most important horizon for plant productivity, as minerals are leached from the A horizon to the B subsoil, this B horizon. The color of soil changes. Here is a photograph of a soil profile. You can see the color changes as you go deep. Topsoil is composed of decomposing organic matter called humus, as well as organisms, along with air and roots. Now, the subsoil is composed of minerals mostly, and weathered parent rock lies below the subsoil. Now, the topsoil, the A horizon, is well aerated because of the activity of living organisms, particularly worms, and the presence of plant roots. The living component of soil is called biota. Topsoil, depending on the location, consists of varying amounts of humus, which is a brown or black organic substance consisting of partially or wholly decayed vegetable or animal matter that provides nutrients for plants and increases the ability of soil to retain water. So while I've been hinting at the inputs and outputs of the soil system, here's the IB syllabus statement. List the inputs and outputs to the soil system. The inputs are organic leaf litter, inorganic material from the parent rock, precipitation, water, and energy, heat from the sun, and organic material that is in the soil providing energy to the living organisms, particularly animals. The outputs are the uptake of nutrients by plants, erosion, gases will leave the soil system, and water will leave the soil system through evaporation. In this soil system model, we can see inputs and we can see outputs. The inputs include gases such as air with oxygen for respiration and nitrogen for nitrogen fixation, water infiltrating from precipitation, rainfall, organic material, primarily leaf litter, but dead animals and feces should also be included here. The addition of organic matter adds energy to the soil system. And lastly, as an input, inorganic mineral particles from weathered parent rock are contributed to the system. This is also known as deposition. Now, the outputs include gases such as carbon dioxide from respiration, nitrogen gas from denitrification, water due to evaporation, the uptake of nutrients as well as water from the soil by plants, and particle loss due to erosion. Now, all of these processes right here are transfers, simple change of location. The transformations include weathering, decomposition, and nutrient cycling. More on the transformations in the slides to come. Now, here are the formal definitions of some of the terms that I've introduced in previous slides. Please take some notes. Weathering is the chemical or mechanical processes by which rocks exposed to the weather undergo changes in character and break down. Decomposition is the process by which organic substances are broken down into small inorganic molecules. Deposition, the geological process by which particles or sediments are added to the land. Infiltration, the process by which water on the ground surface enters the soil. And lastly, leaching is the process of removing substances from the soil by the action of a liquid passing through the soil. The relevant IB syllabus statements are here. State that storages include organic matter, organisms, nutrients, minerals, air, and water. State that the inputs to soil include organic material, leaf litter, inorganic matter from parent rock, precipitation, this is water, gases, and energy. And state that the outputs include uptake by plants, as well as erosion, gases, water through evaporation. In this slide, we have a schematic diagram of the soil as the black rectangular box and a plant growing from the soil surface in the green rectangular box. Now, the soil is an ecosystem because of the high interaction of the biotic and abionic components within the system. Now, the inputs include organic material, leaf litter, and inorganic material from parent rock, as well as precipitation, as well as gases such as oxygen and nitrogen, and energy from the organic material, as well as heat from solar energy. Now, the outputs include the uptake of nutrients and water by plants, as well as leaching, which would be the loss of some minerals down to lower levels of the soil. Within the soil system, the storages include organic matter, organisms, nutrients, minerals, air, and water. Now, pay close attention here. The transfers within the soil system include biological mixing and leaching, but deposition, infiltration, the uptake of nutrients by plants, the addition of leaf litter, and erosion are all transfers to and from the soil system. The transformations within the soil system include decomposition, weathering, and nutrient cycling. This is a nice diagram to study. Pay close attention. The diagram shows soil's relationship to organisms living above the soil, soil's relationship to the atmosphere, and soil's relationship to the lithosphere. And I've labeled the transfers in blue and the transformations in red. Keep this in mind. And let's orient ourselves. This is the A horizon, the topsoil. Parent rock is here, and subsoil lies between. The parent rock weathers a transformation, providing an input of minerals and particles to the soil. Now, bacteria in the soil take nitrogen from the air in a process known as nitrogen fixation. Bacteria return nitrogen to the air in a process known as denitrification. Bacteria in the soil transform organic matter all as a part of a general process known as nutrient cycling. Now, inorganic nutrients are taken up by plants, this is a transfer, and assimilated into plant protein. That would be a transformation. Distinguish the uptake as a transfer and the assimilation as a transformation. Water, as precipitation, infiltrates the soil and then percolates deep into the soil as water passes slowly to groundwater storages. This is a transfer. Water evaporates from the soil and evaporates from the leaves of plants. This is known as evapotranspiration. Nutrients move from plant to animal, and both plant and animal will die, resulting in an input of organic matter to the soil. Now, leaf litter particularly falls to the soil, and this is an input of matter and energy. And decomposition within the soil by bacteria, fungi, or other larger animals, such as worms, that breaks organic matter into inorganic matter as a part of nutrient cycling, all of it a transformation. The important factors in soil formation are time, lots and lots of time, particles from the parent rock, organisms, organic matter, and biological mixing. The soil requires air and water, and soil forms best when the slope angle is relatively low, so there can be an accumulation of material rather than an erosion of material that would be typical of steep slopes. And humans use soil as a resource and have had a huge impact. We'll get to the impact of humans on soil systems in parts 2, 3, and 4. So let's look at the formation of soil more closely, particularly the particles of which soil is composed. The IB syllabus statements state that fertile soils require significant time to develop through the process of succession, and explain the relationship between soil ecosystem succession and fertility. Soil particles are small, and in a strange sense, they start big, usually well uphill. Due to weathering, particles get smaller and smaller and smaller, and due to gravity, the particles move downhill into the valleys. Soil is thin on the steep slopes, but deep and rich in the valley bottoms. This is a photograph of the Mississippi River as it empties into the Gulf of Mexico. The river carries fine particles, small particles, downstream and deposits them into the Gulf. So weathering breaks down parent rock into small particles and smaller particles, and with the addition of air, water, and organisms, and organic matter, soil is formed. Over long spans of time, soil is a non-renewable natural capital. So soil formation involves particles, adding air, water, organisms, roots, worms, bacteria, organic matter, leaf litter, and nutrients, all to the particles. But the particles are of different size, from sand, the largest, to clay, the smallest, and silt is of an intermediate size. All the particles originate from the parent rock. The weathering of rock begins the process of accumulating mineral particles and organic matter in cracks and crevices, and the lichens help to weather the rock as well. The weathering process continues. Rocks break into smaller and smaller pieces, contributing particles to the formation of soil. Soil accumulates in the cracks and the crevices, supporting plant growth, supporting primary productivity. With enough time, along with the addition of organisms, organic matter, water, and air, the soil ecosystems develop. Soils become deeper and deeper and deeper and more fertile, and horizons that are typical of soil profiles appear. Deep fertile soils are found in late successional systems that have been undisturbed through time, As well, fertile soils are found in the valley bottoms, where soil can accumulate. Soil ecosystems can change through succession, but fertile soil contains a community of organisms that work to maintain a functioning nutrient cycling, and this is resistant to erosion. Soil ecosystems change through succession. Fertile soil contains a community of organisms that work to maintain functioning nutrient cycles and that are resistant to soil erosion. Biological mixing, by the worms in particular, serves to maintain the organization of soil. Keep this in mind. State that fertile soils require significant time to develop through the process of succession, and explain the relationship between soil ecosystem succession and fertility. This is a nice image that shows the development of soil through successional time. It's a long process, taking hundreds to thousands of years. Thus, soil is a non-renewable resource, non-renewable natural capital. Notice the soil structure here. Horizons are apparent in well-developed soil, where biological mixing and leaching contribute to the organization of soil. Here's another diagram displaying the long process of soil development over successional time. Climax stages of succession often have well-developed, fertile soils. At this point, I'd like to provide a little clarity about this syllabus statement. Explain how soil can be viewed as an ecosystem. An ecosystem is defined as a biological community of organisms interacting with each other and their physical environment. In this diagram, you can see a biological community of organisms interacting with each other and their physical environment. Again, here is a biological community of organisms interacting with each other and their physical environment. This is a community of organisms that work to maintain functioning nutrient cycles that are resistant to soil erosion. While soil is an ecosystem unto itself, soil is the foundation of the terrestrial ecosystem. This is a good diagram to study. So let's take a closer look at sand, silt, and clay as they contribute to soils, and then we'll define loam as the soil type best suited to support primary productivity. Here's the IB syllabus statement. Compare and contrast the structure and properties of sand, clay, and loam soils, including their effect on primary productivity. Remember, sand's particles are larger than those of clay, and the spaces between the particles are also larger in sand than they are in clay. Now, loam will be a mixture of these particles as well as some silt, as well as all of the other ingredients in soil. You can see in this image the relative sizes of sand, silt, and clay. Sand has large particles and large pore spaces, while clay has tiny particles and tiny pore spaces. If a sample of soil is shaken in water, it settles according to particle size. Sand, the largest particles, settle to the bottom first, then silt, and then clay. And you can see the appearance of sand and clay. There are two important properties of soil. There's water flow, otherwise known as drainage, measured in milliliters of water flowing per gram of soil per minute. Secondly, there is water holding, measured in milliliters of water held within the pores of soil per gram of soil. Water flow measures the soil's ability to drain water, while water holding measures the amount of water held within the soil. Now stay tuned to these characteristics as I dig into each of the different particles. Now sand, as you can see in these images, has large pore spaces. Thus it's porous. Water drains well through sand, and water holding of sand is very poor. Tends to be dry because the water drains so well. There's good aeration, high oxygen levels, low organic matter, and low mineral availability. Silt has medium to small pore spaces. Water does not drain well, low aeration, low oxygen, high mineral availability, however, and low organic matter. Now, clay has very, very small pore spaces. Thus, water does not drain well, but it holds water well. Thus, it's very wet. It's waterlogged because its water holding capacity is very high. Very low aeration, low oxygen availability, but high mineral availability. The terracotta soldiers in China are made of clay. The small particle size allows the small particles to stick together, a quality that people have taken advantage of in making ceramics. Here is a photograph of the Yellow River Delta, where very fine particles, silt and clay in particular, are deposited into the delta region. Now pay close attention. Loam is not one extreme or the other, but is a more balanced mixture of everything. Medium to large pore spaces, high organic matter, good water retention, well aerated, oxygenated, mineral availability, and biota. It has living organisms. Loam is a soil that is not predominantly one particle or the other. Loam soils generally contain more nutrients, moisture, and humus, more than sandy soils. The loam has better drainage and infiltration of water and air than silty soils, and they're easier to till and plow than clay soils. A soil texture triangle seen here on the right illustrates the differences in the composition of soils. Now, loam soils, which you can see through here, are about 40% sand, about 40% silt, and about 20% clay by weight. Now, loams have a dark color because of the humus, and they will stick together like bread dough when squeezed. The soil texture triangle can be used to determine soil type. Watch carefully. 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay results in a loam soil. Here's the relevant IB syllabus statement. A soil texture triangle illustrates the differences in the composition of soils. The triangle is used as follows. Clay, enter the diagram from the left straight. For silt, angle down from the right. And for sand, angle up from the bottom. So for loam, we have 20% clay, we have 40% silt, and 40% sand gives us loam. Now, loam is not predominantly sand, silt, or clay. Loam soils generally contain more nutrients, moisture, organic matter, humus than sandy soils or clay soils. Using this table as a guide, work to understand why loam would support the highest levels of primary productivity. Clay has high levels of nutrients. That's good, but it holds too much water and it does not drain. Thus, there's no air. Clay suffers from water logging. Sand, on the other hand, has high levels of air, but it tends to be quite dry because of drainage. It has very good drainage. Now, loam has intermediate qualities in all of these soil properties. As well, loam soils generally contain nutrients and organic matter, moisture, and humus, and it contains more of these things than sandy soils or clay soils. Here's an image of loam. Wonderful, dark, fertile soil. If you were able to buy land with a loam soil such as this, you're buying good natural capital. Capital that is partially responsible for producing the natural income of primary productivity, food or forest. Loam has high organic matter, good water retention, it's well aerated, it's oxygenated, it's got mineral availability, and it's got biota. It's full of life, detritivores, and decomposers. And that brings us to the end of IB ESS, Soil Systems and Terrestrial Food Production Systems, Part 1.